Chapter 1. The Echo of Distant Wars. The stars bore silent witness to the frailty of peace. Hanging in the void, the remnants of past battles drifted like ghosts, the shattered hulls of warships long abandoned. No one spoke of them, yet they were always there, a testament to the violence that once raged through the cosmos. Humanity had seen enough war, enough bloodshed, enough loss to understand one undeniable truth. War was a curse that devoured everything in its path. I stood at the edge of the orbital station, watching as Earth hung below me like a wounded animal, scarred yet stubbornly alive. It had taken centuries to rise from the ashes of its own brutality, to leave behind the old ways. We had sworn an oath. Never again. Never again would we turn our weapons upon ourselves. Never again would we let war define us. But oaths were fragile things, and the galaxy was vast. The warning had come 2 weeks ago. A fleet, massive and unknown, detected at the edge of human space. Their purpose remained unclear, their silence more ominous than words. The United Terran Assembly convened in frantic whispers, debating, analyzing, fearing. And now, I had been called back. Commander Alric. A voice crackled over my earpiece, sharp and urgent. The council is waiting. The briefing is about to start. I turned away from the observation deck and made my way through the corridors of the station, my mind a whirlwind of speculation. There was a time when my name had been synonymous with war, when I had led fleets into battle, when I had seen worlds burn and men die in ways too gruesome to recount, and yet, it had been years since my uniform bore the insignia of war. I had sworn to never take up arms again, but fear was a strange thing. It made people desperate, made them forget oaths and promises. And deep inside, I knew, if war was coming again, I would have no choice but to stand at its gates. The briefing room was filled with officials, their faces grim, their voices hushed. At the center of the holographic display hovered the fleet, 32 ships of unknown origin, holding position just beyond our borders. No signals, no attempts at communication, just silence. Counselor Vasquez, a woman whose words carried weight, even in the void of uncertainty, turned to me. Her eyes betrayed a fear she dared not voice. "Commander," she said, "we need to know. Are they here to negotiate? Or was this the prelude to a war humanity was not ready to fight?" Chapter 2. Shadows on the Horizon. The weight of expectation pressed against my shoulders as I studied the holographic display before me. 32 ships, each an enigma, hovering just beyond our reach. The silence was deafening, more unsettling than an open declaration of hostility. In war, at least, there was clarity. This was something else, an uncertain limbo where fear and hope waged their own battle. Counselor Vasquez shifted uncomfortably, her fingers tapping against the metal table. "We've sent multiple diplomatic transmissions, not a single response." "What do they want?" I folded my arms, my gaze fixed on the fleet's dark silhouettes. "They're waiting, watching, measuring us." "Measuring us for what?" Vasquez's voice wavered slightly, betraying the fear in her heart. I had seen this before. In countless conflicts, in the cold, calculated patience of an enemy that did not need haste. We had encountered civilizations before, some friendly, some indifferent, some openly hostile, but this felt different. The doors hissed open and Admiral Karsten strode in, his presence commanding the room's attention. "We cannot afford to wait any longer," he announced, his voice clipped and firm. "If they refuse to respond, we must consider a preemptive measure." The murmurs of agreement spread through the room like ripples in still water. Fear had taken root, and with it, the instinct to strike first. But war was a path with no return. I exhaled slowly. We don't know what they want. If we make the first move, we invite a war we might not be able to win. Karsten's eyes met mine, hard as steel. "And if waiting means they strike first?" The tension in the room was palpable. The weight of a decision that could alter the course of history hung in the air. The fate of humanity teetered on the edge of a knife. "Then we prepare," I said at last. "But we do not strike first." Not until we know for sure. Vasquez nodded, but her expression remained troubled. Then we pray. We have the time to find out. Beyond the station's reinforced windows, the alien fleet loomed, an unmoving shadow on the horizon, watching, waiting, and perhaps deciding our fate. Chapter 3. The fractured accord. The air in the command center had grown stale with uncertainty. No decisions had been made, no answers found. Only the eerie silence of the unknown fleet remained, an unspoken challenge hovering just beyond our borders. We're running out of time, Vasquez murmured, rubbing her temples. The longer we wait, the more unstable the situation becomes. The assembly is restless. There are talks of emergency measures. Emergency measures? I repeated, my voice edged with disbelief. They're ready to abandon diplomacy already? She met my gaze, the weight of leadership pressing down upon her. People are afraid, Alric. They see a threat they don't understand, and fear turns into aggression faster than reason can intervene. The console before us blinked to life, cutting through the tense atmosphere. A transmission had been received, not from the alien fleet but from one of our own vessels. The Aegis, one of our outer patrol ships, had intercepted an unknown object approaching our space. Put it through, Admiral Karsten ordered. The screen flickered, revealing the grainy, flickering image of Captain Reynolds. Static crackled before. His voice came through, laced with urgency. This is Captain Reynolds of the Aegis. We've detected a small vessel, possibly a scout. It's human-made. The room fell silent. A human vessel? Here? Now? Explain, Karsten demanded. Reynolds hesitated. It's old, pre-Unity era technology, something that shouldn't even be operational. And there's a distress signal coming from inside, but it's encrypted in a dead language, ancient Earth dialects we stopped using centuries ago. A chill ran down my spine. This was impossible. And yet, there it was. An echo from a forgotten past, appearing at the worst possible moment. Karsten straightened. Prepare a retrieval team. We need to know what's inside that ship. As the orders were relayed, I exchanged a glance with Vasquez. The alien fleet, the lost vessel, the past bleeding into the present. One way or another, we were about to learn what it all meant. Chapter 4. Ghosts of the Past. The Aegis hung in the void like a sentinel, its retrieval team already en route to the derelict vessel. Through the station's observation window, I watched the small shuttle disappear into the darkness, its course set for the unknown. Do we have any identification on that ship? Vasquez asked, her voice tight with apprehension. Negative, Reynolds responded through the comms. The exterior markings are too worn to decipher, but we estimate it's at least 500 years old. We're prepping for boarding now. Karsten folded his arms. We need to be ready for anything. If this is some kind of trap, we can't afford to be caught off guard. The silence in the command center was thick, punctuated only by the occasional beeping of status monitors. On the holographic display, the retrieval team's approach was marked in blue, slowly closing the distance to their target. Then, a burst of static, a flicker on the feed. We're in, came the voice of Lieutenant Darcy, lead officer of the retrieval team. The ship's interior is unsettling. It looks like it's been abandoned for centuries, but the systems are still running. Emergency, lights, oxygen levels, even the artificial gravity. It's all functional. I exchanged a glance with Vasquez. Something's keeping that ship alive. Keep scanning for life signs. Understood, Darcy responded. A pause. Then, Sir, you're going to want to see this. The video feed stabilized, revealing a dimly lit corridor lined with frost-covered bulkheads. At its center, an old cryostasis pod stood upright, covered in thick layers of ice. The screen on the pod blinked weakly, flashing symbols that no longer belonged to any known language. Is there someone inside? I asked, my pulse quickening. Darcy's voice was hushed. Yes, sir. And the biometric scan just confirmed something. Else, the life signs are human. A cold dread settled over the room. This was no ordinary relic, no simple ghost of the past. It was alive. Chapter 5. awakening the unknown. The command center held its breath as the cryostasis pod loomed on the feed, frost trailing down its edges like frozen tears. A relic from an era long past, yet still holding on to life. "Proceed with caution," I instructed, my voice measured despite the unease gnawing at my gut. "We don't know what we're dealing with." Darcy's gloved hand reached out, wiping away the frost-covered glass. Inside, a figure lay motionless. A man, his face eerily peaceful, as if trapped in a dream that refused to end. The biometric scan scrolled across the screen, confirming the impossible. Vital signs were steady, the body still sustained. "This technology shouldn't even exist anymore," Vasquez murmured, eyes flickering between the data streams. "Cryostasis. From that era would have failed centuries ago." Karsten's jaw tightened. "Then we need to ask, why hasn't it?" A deep exhale came through Darcy's comms. "We're initiating manual override. If this system fails, we'll lose him." The command was given. Steam hissed as the pod's ancient mechanisms groaned to life, the ice cracking away in thin fractures. A slow, rhythmic beep signaled a heartbeat stabilizing, lungs drawing their first breath in centuries. The man's eyelids fluttered. Then his eyes snapped open, wild and full of something primal, a fear that sent a chill down my spine. He gasped, his chest rising sharply as if pulled from the depths of drowning, his lips parted, words struggling to form. "Where am I?" The room was deathly silent. "You're safe," Darcy assured him, though I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. "Can you tell us your name?" The man's eyes darted around, unfocused, lost, in some memory buried under centuries of ice. Then finally, his hoarse voice carried through the comms. I was on a mission. A war. The war. His breath hitched, panic seizing him as he clutched his chest. "They're coming," he rasped. "You have to stop them." Every nerve in my body went rigid. "Who's coming?" I pressed, my own pulse spiking. His gaze locked onto the camera, eyes filled with a terror that felt far too real. "The ones who ended my time. The ones who will end yours." The cryostasis pod systems failed completely, the power flickering out. The screen went black, and for the first time since this mystery began, true fear crept into my bones. Chapter 6. The Warning. The silence in the command center was deafening. The cryostasis pod had gone dark, its occupant left gasping for breath before the systems failed completely. But his words still echoed in my mind. "The ones who ended my time. The ones who will end yours." Vasquez was the first to break the silence. "Get that pod back online, now." Engineers scrambled to reroute power, but I could already see the readings. Every system in the ancient vessel was shutting down, as if deliberately erasing itself. The ship had been floating for centuries, yet the moment its secret was revealed, it began to self-destruct. "Commander, we have a problem." Darcy's voice was tight with urgency. "A signal just went out from this ship, a high-frequency transmission directed beyond our borders." "To whom?" Karsten demanded. "Unknown. The encryption is unlike anything in our database. Whatever this message was, it wasn't meant for us." A cold realization settled over me. This was no mere relic of the past. This ship, this survivor, was a beacon. A warning too late. "Get the retrieval team out of there," I ordered. "Now, before..." The ancient vessel shuddered violently. On the main display, a pulse of energy rippled outward from its core, a silent detonation tearing through the ship's remains. The retrieval shuttle veered sharply, barely escaping the expanding debris field. "We lost the pod," Darcy shouted. "The survivor, he's gone!" I clenched my fists. Damn it. We had been so close. The feed crackled, static filling the room before. One last transmission pushed through. Faint, distorted, but unmistakable. "They know." Then silence. A long, heavy pause filled the room before Karsten exhaled sharply. "Commander, we need to assume the worst. If that signal reached its destination, we may not have much time." I turned back to the holographic map, to the silent fleet still waiting at our borders. Watching. Waiting. And now, I understood why. Prepare. For immediate defensive measures, I ordered. If war is coming, we need to be ready. The last vestiges of hope slipped through my fingers like grains of sand. Humanity had always feared war. Now, it seemed, war had finally come for us. Chapter 7. The Gathering Storm. The command center was a flurry of activity. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone present. Reports flooded in, officers scrambled to relay orders, and the air was thick with barely contained panic. "We've detected movement," an ensign called out. "The fleet at our borders, it's shifting, they're aligning into formation." A cold shiver ran through me. This was it. No more waiting, no more second-guessing. The transmission from the ancient ship had sealed our fate. Whatever these entities were, they had been waiting for a signal, and now they had received it. "Admiral Karsten, activate planetary defenses," I ordered. "I want every fleet mobilized. No one fires unless I give the command. We need to know their intent first." "If they attack, we won't have time to hesitate," Karsten reminded me. "Then we better pray they don't fire first," I murmured, eyes locked on the tactical display. The alien fleet moved with precise coordination, their ships gliding forward in a slow, deliberate advance. There was no communication, no signals, only silence. The kind that stretched before a storm. Vasquez stepped beside me. If they were waiting for that signal, does that mean there's still someone or something out there controlling them? I exhaled slowly. "I don't know, but I intend to find out. Open a direct hailing channel. Broadcast on all frequencies. Let's see if they'll talk before they shoot." A moment later, the communications officer gave a nod. "Channel open." I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the growing dread in my chest. "This is Commander Alric of the United Terran Assembly. You have entered sovereign human space. Identify yourselves and state your intentions." Seconds passed, then minutes. The silence deepened, pressing against us like a tangible force. And then, the response came, a single word, distorted and metallic, filtered through the speakers. "Surrender." The room froze. I tightened my jaw. Not happening. The alien fleet stopped its advance. For a moment, I dared to believe we had halted whatever was coming. Then their lead ship fired. The war had begun. Chapter 8. The First Strike. The void ignited with the brilliance of energy weapons, their luminescent streaks cutting through the darkness. The first shot from the alien fleet had shattered the fragile silence, and in its wake, chaos erupted. Evasive. "Maneuvers! Shields to maximum!" I barked, gripping the edge of the command console as the station shuddered from a distant explosion. "Enemy projectiles incoming. Impact in 12 seconds, an officer reported, his voice taut with urgency. "Divert all power to forward shields. Get our fleets in position," Karsten ordered. The command center became a storm of overlapping voices, orders flying as our defenses scrambled to meet the attack. The first of their fire struck one of our outer sentry stations. An explosion bloomed like a dying star, tearing metal and humanity alike into the void. My teeth clenched. So it begins. Return. "Fire. Target their lead battleship," I commanded. The battle began in earnest. Our capital ships roared to life, unleashing their arsenal in a synchronized counterattack. The sheer scale of the engagement was unlike anything I had witnessed before. Our weapons found their marks, detonations rippling across enemy hulls. But they kept advancing unyielding. "Commander, we're detecting energy fluctuations across their fleet," Vasquez called out, her hands flying across the data readouts. "They're charging something." I didn't hesitate. "All ships, defensive formations, brace for impact." A heartbeat later, a blinding surge of power erupted from the alien flagship, a colossal wave of energy rippling outward. The shockwave crashed into our frontline cruisers, sending some spinning out of formation, others vanishing in bursts of shattered metal and fire. "Multiple casualties across the fleet," an officer cried. "We can't sustain this bombardment." Karsten turned to me, his expression grim. "Commander, we need a new strategy or this war is lost before it's even begun." My mind raced. We couldn't match their firepower directly. Not yet. but maybe we didn't have to. "Patch me through to all fleet captains," I said, forcing steel into my voice. The comms officer gave a quick nod, and a moment later I spoke. "This is Commander Alric. We will not break. They expect us to fight head-on, to be overwhelmed. But we are not just warriors. We are survivors. We adapt. We endure. We win. Execute the shadow flank maneuver. Now." The fleet moved as one, shifting, splitting into two groups that curled around the enemy's advance like closing jaws. Our smaller strike forces slipped through the chaos, targeting the exposed flanks of the alien fleet. Their initial assault had been devastating, but now they had underestimated us. "Direct hits on their secondary fleet," Vasquez reported. "They're being forced into a defensive stance." A grim smile tugged at my lips. "Now we make them fear us." Chapter 9. The turning tide. The battlefield was a maelstrom of fire and destruction. The shadow flank maneuver was working. Our ships outmaneuvered the enemy, striking at their weakest points, forcing them to adjust. The once relentless alien advance faltered. "They're retreating from the outer perimeter," Vasquez called out, her voice edged with astonishment. "We've broken their forward line." But I knew better than to celebrate too soon. "Hold formation. Press the advantage, but do not overextend." Karsten nodded. "Their main fleet is adapting. Look." On the tactical display, the enemy ships were shifting again, forming a tighter defensive cluster. Their rear lines pulsed with energy, massive, power surges coursing through their formation. "They're recharging for another wave," I realized. "If they fire together, it could be worse than before." The thought of another devastating assault made my stomach turn. We had no choice but to strike. "First, send in the Vanguard Squadron," I ordered. "Full-speed assault on their core power relays. We take those out. We disrupt their entire energy network." Vasquez hesitated. "That's a high-risk move. Our fighters may not survive the counterattack." "I know," I said grimly. "But if we don't, take the risk. We lose the war here and now." The command was relayed. Like streaks of light, our swiftest fighters raced toward the enemy formation, weaving between explosions, dodging turret fire. The alien fleet responded, shifting focus onto our attackers, but it was too late. "Vanguard Squadron is in position," a comms officer announced. "They're locking onto the power relays. Fire at will," I commanded. A split second later, a cascade of explosions erupted along the enemy's central line. Their energy readings plummeted. The coordinated charge they had been preparing flickered and died. Their formation collapsed. "Their weapons are failing!" Vasquez cheered. "We did it!" I exhaled, my pulse pounding. "Push them back. Make them regret ever coming here." A desperate barrage erupted from our forces, hammering into the weakened enemy ships. One by one, they began to fall back, their control shattered. For the first time since the battle began, victory seemed possible. But deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 10. The Final Stand. The remnants of the enemy fleet drifted like wounded beasts, their formation shattered, their power fading. The battle had turned in our favor, but I knew better than to let my guard down. The war was not over. "They're retreating," Vasquez reported, her voice a mix of triumph and uncertainty. "But their lead ship is holding position. They're not fleeing completely." I narrowed my eyes at the tactical display. The alien flagship remained still, its energy fluctuating. Wildly, something wasn't right. "They're up to something," Karsten muttered. "What's their game?" A sudden spike in energy readings sent alarms blaring across the command center. "Massive buildup of power detected," an officer shouted. "They're overloading their core. Sir, they're going to self-destruct." Realization crashed over me like a tidal wave. "They're trying to take us with them. Evacuate all nearby ships. Get our forces clear now." The orders spread across the fleet like wildfire. Our ships veered away, engines burning bright as they fled from the impending detonation. But not all would make it in time. "Commander, 2 cruisers are still in range. They won't make it," Vasquez cried. My fists clenched. "Open a channel to them." The screen flickered to life, revealing the determined face of Captain Harlow aboard the Valiant. "Sir, we won't clear the blast radius in time," he said, his voice calm. "Requesting permission to engage ramming protocol. We can take their flagship down before it detonates." A lump formed in my throat. It was suicide, but it was our best chance. I forced myself to nod. Permission granted. Your sacrifice won't be forgotten. Harlow smiled, resolute. It's been an honor, Commander. Give 'em hell. The screen cut out, and the Valiant surged forward, engines at full burn. The alien flagship responded with desperate fire, but the Valiant pushed through, shields collapsing, under the onslaught. And then, with a final burst of speed, it crashed into the enemy ship. A blinding explosion filled the viewport, consuming both vessels in a cascade of fire and shattered metal. The shockwave rippled outward, rocking our remaining ships. Then silence. I exhaled shakily, my heart heavy. The enemy fleet was gone. The battle was won. But as I gazed at the burning remnants of our victory, I couldn't shake the feeling that this war had only just begun. Commander? Vasquez's voice was quiet. What now? I straightened, forcing steel into my voice. We rebuild, we prepare, and we make sure this never happens again. Humanity had faced the brink of annihilation and survived. But survival was not victory. Not yet. As the debris of war drifted in the void, I knew one truth remained. The fear of war would always haunt us, and one day it would return.